Okay, this is a continuation of the Algebra 2 lesson for Chapter 1.1. The fourth thing that you need to know from Chapter 1.1 is unit analysis. It turns out that actually is a good thing that the video is separated here, because unit analysis is a skill that's going to come up a lot this year. So you may want to actually at some point in the year come back and revisit this video, and this way you can come straight to the unit analysis portion. Every year I have lots of students who struggle with word problems, and if they would start with this skill, with unit analysis, they might find they have an easier time. Before we get to word problems though, let me talk about three basic skills that I want to make sure you know. In this first example, it points out that you can cancel units when you are multiplying if one of the units is on top of the fraction and the other is on the bottom. This is something I'm sure that you remember from back in Algebra 1. Second thing, remember that the word per means divided by, or in other words, means ratio. So it's clear here, dollars per hour becomes dollars per hour. What I want to make sure you remember, if you're told miles per hour, like let's say 55 miles per hour, 55 is on top in that case. And hours, if it had been 55 miles per 3 hours, then the 3 would be on the bottom. The third thing, if you have units in one form, like feet per second, but you want them in another form, like miles per hour, remember that you're going to have to do some conversions. I've got to somehow turn feet into miles, and somehow I've got to turn seconds into hours. So, as the textbook says, there are 3,600 seconds in an hour. Now they've actually left a step out for most of us. Most of us think of it as 60 minutes per hour and then 60 seconds per minute. But they've condensed that down into this conversion here. Similarly, there's a conversion of miles to feet here. And now I can cancel out everything that I don't want. I get rid of feet, they cancel away here. I get rid of seconds, they cancel away here, and I have the units that I wanted in the beginning, miles and hours. And now I simply multiply through. Okay, now let's look at how to apply these skills in a word problem. Let's say this is the situation you're given, a very common one if you travel, the question of exchange rates. What I want to know first, and this is often the real challenge, is to figure out what are the units I want my answer to be in. So in fact, that's step one really of any word problem. What kind of units does my answer need to be? Now in this case, the answer I want is in dollars, because the question is, how much can you get in dollars? Then the next thing to look at is, what numbers do I have? We've got 425 and 8.5, but I'm not going to write down those numbers yet. Instead, I'm going to write down the units that go with them. Pesos for the 425 and pesos for dollar for the 8.5. Now, doing unit analysis, I look to see whether or not the units that I have are going to turn into the units that I want. And in this case, they will not. I've got dollars on the bottom here, and I want dollars. And these pesos aren't going to cancel because pesos are on the top in both cases. So what I ought to do is flip this ratio here. 8.5 pesos per dollar is the same thing as $1 per 8.5 pesos. Okay, so now I can write those numbers in. $1 per 8.5 pesos, like I said, and 425 pesos. At this point, all that's left is to multiply, cancel the units that I don't want. I didn't want pesos, and sure enough, I end up with the dollars I wanted, and my answer is $50. Let's look at another unit analysis problem that's a little more challenging, more like the questions you're going to see in tonight's homework. units that I want? Well, let's find the question that's actually asked in this paragraph. Ultimately, it's how many minutes does it take the expedition to climb to the top of Angel Falls? I know I'm going a little quickly here. You may at some points along the way want to pause and give yourself a chance to actually read the question. The units that I want are minutes. Now, what numbers do I have? I've got the 0.25 and I've got the 3,212. So what are their units? Let's put those down. I've got miles per hour for the 0.25, and I've got feet for the 3,212. Now, like before, I look at this and I say, okay, is this going to give me the units that I want? No, it's not. I don't even see minutes at all here on the left. I want minutes, and the closest thing I have to minutes is hours. And hours isn't even on the top of this ratio, and I need it to be on the top. So first of all, I better flip it. And before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and write down the numbers that go with these so that I don't forget that in flipping it, I also need to flip the number. So I've got 1 hour for every 0.25 miles. Now at least I have hours on the top, which is a unit of time, and minutes on the top. Let's not forget the numbers for feet, so I'll go ahead and write those down as well, 3,212. I still don't have the units I want, though, even on the left side of the equation. So I've got to find a way to change hours to minutes. In fact, I've got to come up with a conversion. Well, I know the conversion. I know there are 60 minutes in an hour, so I go ahead and write that down. Now I'm going to be able to get rid of the hours that I didn't want. I can cancel those away. And I get the units that I do want. I've now got minutes on the left finally, and I do have minutes on the right. But I can't get rid of feet yet. I can't cancel feet with miles. So I'm going to need another conversion. I've got to figure out a conversion of feet to miles. Well, if I remember back to just a few slides before, I did see the conversion factor for feet to miles. This isn't something I'm expecting you to memorize, but this is a skill that you're going to have to develop, finding those conversion factors, and maybe that you end up looking them up on the internet or in a book. That's the conversion factor that I'm talking about. 1 mile is the same as 5,280 feet. So I go ahead and plug that in here. And now, miles and feet both cancel away. Miles cancels here, feet cancels here, and all that's left is to multiply these terms. In doing so, I don't want to make a mistake. I want to make sure that I realize the ones on the top, the 60s on the top, the 3,212 is on the top, and the ones on the top. The numbers that I have on the bottom are 0.25, 1, and 5,280. So in fact, what I'm going to do is 1 times 60 times 3,212 times 1 again. And then on the bottom, I'm going to have 0.25 times 1 times 5,280. And I'll divide the top by the bottom. If I do that properly, I come up with 146 minutes, which is the correct answer. But let's just double check one last time with this unit analysis. I ended up with minutes. Is that right? Well, hours did cancel. Miles did cancel. Feet did cancel, and sure enough, minutes was what I was supposed to end up with. So there's my answer, 146. Your homework tonight. Page 7, what I want you to do is not just give me the answers to these problems, but to write out and show me the work that you did. I'll expect you to bring in those worked out problems to class tomorrow. If you want to pause the video here and write these down, fine. If you are able to pause the video here and print this out, that's good too. But this is the only place that I'm going to be announcing the homework right now.